Hello and welcome. So one thing you hear all the time on a track is that you have to drive your line. And this means you have to hit your apex, the turn-in, and the track out points. So when you're driving around, you're always thinking, okay, drive my line and I'll be really fast. But the question is, how do you actually know if you're driving your line? When you're on track, everything is coming by really fast, and it's really hard to know if you actually hit that apex perfectly, or if you were off by just a few inches or a couple of feet, and how you tracked out and how you turned in. So the Z1 Analyzer can help you with this. It can help you determine what your line was. It can show you how your line compares to others, and it can show you whether you were faster or slower than somebody else through a corner, depending on the line that you took versus the one that they took. So stick around and we'll show you how the Z1 Analyzer does all of this. So this is the second video in our series of videos about the Z1 Analyzer's analysis screens. And the one we're going to be talking about today is the driving line. So you get to this by going to the analysis screen and then choosing driving line. So what I've got loaded up here right now are 2 laps from Lime Rock. And you can see we have a track map and then the sectors and the finish line. So I can rotate this track map by clicking this icon up here to get it to be in an orientation which is the one I'm looking for. So I'm going to start with how we had it to begin with right here. And you can also flip horizontally or vertically as well if you like. So right now, as I said, this is the overview of Lime Rock. Now I can zoom in on this track map by using the mouse scroll wheel or these plus and minus icons up here. Plus zooms in and minus zooms out. And if I double click, that takes me back to having the entire track map displayed on the screen. So with the driving line analysis screen, you really want to zoom in quite far, because the idea behind this is that when you zoom in, you can see the track limits and the driving line that you were taking and that somebody else was taking. So one thing that we do want to mention with the driving line is that in order to get the edges of the track displayed like this, you do need to have a track edge definition done for whichever track in the sim that you're racing. So you can do this yourself, and we have another video which shows how you can do that. We'll link to that in the description below. And then for many of the tracks out there, there actually are already predefined ones. If that's the case, the analyzer will download the track edge for the track that you're driving and display it for you. But if you come in here and you see that there actually isn't a track edge and they just have the driving lines with no track, then you can either define the track edge yourself, which is pretty easy. You just drive around a couple times, or just let us know and we'll see if we can create one and add it for that track. So in this case, I have 2 laps loaded. The one in red is a 53.2 second lap, and the one in blue is slightly slower at 54.09. So I can drag this track map using regular mouse commands. So now here we are coming into Big Bend, and what this tells me is that the red driving line was farther out to start with than the blue. The blue one was really hugging the inside of the corner. And as we went through the turn, they actually cross over so that the blue starts close and then goes farther out and then cuts back in, whereas the red one starts farther out and then turns in sooner and then has a closer apex at the end. So Big Bend at Lime Rock is quite a tricky turn because there's sort of a double apex, and the question is, well, how far do you cut the first one and how far do you cut the second one? So this shows you 2 different styles going through this turn. And then you can see both of them hit the exit point at about the same time, almost exactly the same place on the track. And when you get to the first sector, the difference actually is pretty negligible. It's only 0.05 of a second. So both of these pass through the turn are quite good, but they just show you two different ways of doing the same turn. If you came through here and you found out that one of these was miles off, like say this red line was in the middle here, and you actually thought when you were driving this you were much closer to the side, this would show you that you actually had a lot of space that you could come in. Okay, so now I'm back to zoomed out to see the entire track map. So one of the things you can do in the driving line is you can actually play the lap back in real time, or you can play it back slowed down. It's usually better to play it back at a slightly slower speed. If you play it back in real time, it goes by too quickly and it's harder to figure out what was happening. So if you click this play icon, it will start playing the lap. And if you click it again, it will then slow down. And every time you click it, it will slow it down a little bit more. So we are going to play it at quarter speed. And if I zoom in, you can see the cars. One is a red dot and one is a blue dot driving the lap. And you can see what the difference is based on the lines that they take, and if one of them is ahead or behind, or if the two lines are pretty much equal in how fast they go through the turn. And this gives you a really good idea of the lines through. The red car was much wider initially than the blue car. And the blue car kind of makes more of a smoother U out of this turn. And the red car sort of comes in much wider and then cuts closer as they're exiting. And as we mentioned before, they both have almost the exact same exit and track out point. So I'm going to stop that lap right there. Now you could watch this entire lap all the way around just by dragging the track map if you wanted to. And we definitely suggest you do this because that does give you the best idea of where you are on the track and how you're doing compared to another car. And if you can, try loading in a lap of somebody else who's a second or so faster than you. Okay, so now we have zoomed back out to see the entire lap again. And I want to talk quickly about these sector markers. So in iRacing, Lime Rock is split up into 4 sectors. So we have 4 boxes for sector 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see here the sector time for each lap and which lap was faster and by how much. So the only sector where the blue lap was faster was the first sector, and it was only barely faster. For all the other sectors, the faster 53.2 second lap had the advantage. And that makes sense because it was overall a faster lap. But if you look at this and you see that maybe in one sector, one particular lap is much faster than the other, that would be a really good indication that the sector, that the faster sector had the better line. So let's look at the final sector for a second, because that was the one where there was the biggest difference. It was 0.36 of a second in favor of the faster lap. So we're going to zoom in, starting just past the end of the third sector. And we're going to follow the red driving line and the blue driving line through these few turns. So one thing to know about the track edges is that the white line here defining the edge of the track is where the white line is on the actual track. So when you see a driving line like this red one here, and it appears to go off the actual track, that's because this one is using the rumble strips, whereas the blue line is not. It's going right to the edge, but not actually getting on those rumble strips. So there is a little bit extra space that this blue line could be using to carry some more speed through this first turn. And you notice here that the red line is a much wider arc. The blue line really kind of cuts that corner a bit. And both of these actually miss the apex a little bit. You can see here that there's a bit of space, that they both could have been a bit closer and probably both carry a bit more speed through. And now as we come down to Big Bend and the exit, you can see on the exit here, they both had a pretty good line through. Again, maybe they could have been a bit closer to that apex. But at the exit, the red line went right to the edge of the track, and the blue line left a couple of feet there. And so based on that, the red line can carry more speed through that final turn, and that ends up to be 0.36 of a second faster through that final sector. So these are ways in which using this driving line analysis screen on the analyzer can help you determine where you can gain time, or where you're faster, or where you may be slower than somebody else, and also how you're just driving that line. Are you actually hitting your marks and being where you think you are, or is there a little bit of extra space on the inside or the outside that you could be using to go faster? I hope this has been a useful video, and please subscribe to the channel, and we'll be having more about these analysis screens in the future.